right, so let's get to January 6th, 2021. Now, I don't want to rehash. Just to be clear, chances are you've probably already seen or heard other show hosts talking about January 6th, talking about what a travesty it was, talking about how it's being used and abused. I want to talk specifically about the need, and this need falls upon you and me, but you, the need to explain to people, to convince people in many ways that January 6th was it not an insurrection, not only was it not uh, the way that it's being portrayed as the worst event in modern American history, akin to 9/11 or Pearl Harbor or anything like that. Not only are those things not true, but there's a reason why those narratives have been pushed out. There's actually two or three reasons why, but there's one or two major reasons, and we need people to understand this. We need people to realize, and when I say people, I'm talking about your normie friends, your leftist friends, your centrist friends, maybe even your Republican Fox News watching Republican friends who still think January 6th was kind of a big deal and kind of a riot and an insurrection, and really there should be some people anyway. Nobody should be punished for it because it was all manufactured. It was the entirety of January 6th, the quote unquote riots. They were manufactured. They were planned, and not by the members of the people that went there to rightly protest what they felt was a stolen election. And definitely not Trump or any of his people. None of these people should be in any trouble whatsoever. And every one of them who is currently in jail or who has been convicted should be pardoned. Now you might say, well, but we need to look at it case by case. No, blanket pardon across the board. Okay? Across the board, blanket pardon. If you really break down the scenario, you'll understand that even those who went too far and maybe got violent and maybe got destructive, those people should still be pardoned because, again, I would argue that had the events themselves not been manufactured by those who opposed President Trump, not by President Trump himself, but by his opposition, if the events had not been manufactured, then none of those people would have acted the way that they did. But before we get into some important pieces of evidence, I want to explain the why part. Okay, why did January 6th happen? And the reason that it happened was because this is shortly after the 2020 election, obviously. This was a time when it was long planned, long announced. President Trump had been calling for it for weeks, calling for people to go to Washington, D.C. on January 6th and to peacefully protest, to send a message to Congress and specifically to senators to say, hey, this election was fraudulent. We support President Trump. We want the real results to reign. That was the intention. It was misguided. There's a good chance that President Trump might have been manipulated into calling for it. That's a discussion for another day. But we have to understand why this happened, why they took this opportunity, they being the deep state, the uniparty swamp, the globalist elite cabal. Their intention was not just to beat Donald Trump. They'd already done that. Their intention was to prevent Donald Trump from ever making it back into the White House. They knew that they'd been done wrong and they'd been doing wrong for a long time, and that if he were to win again in 2024, as he did, praise God for that, then there's a chance that all of their lies, their cheating, the corruption, the scandals that aren't known about yet, at least in full, that those would be exposed. And by golly, they couldn't let that happen. They were beside themselves thinking of that being a possibility. So they positioned it to where they would have ammunition to use against him, to possibly coerce him, to impeach him as they tried to do again a second time, and to put the label of insurrection onto him so that if he was able to win again in 2024, as he did, praise God, then they would have something that they could hold over him to prevent him from ascending back into the office of the President of the United States. That was the primary goal, intention number one. A secondary goal, call it a perk, a fringe benefit, a bonus, cherry on top, was you and me and any other patriots who would stand up. They needed to make examples of those who would stand by President Trump. They needed to silence us. And let's face it, it worked. For the most part, it worked. Their intention of silencing us, it worked. I mean, rallies that have taken place after, I'm not talking about Trump rallies during the campaign. I'm talking about protests for various events that happened after, that were planned after January 6, 2021. There was a tremendous cooling effect that swept across patriots here in this nation. I saw events that were embarrassingly small. These were events that should have had tens of thousands of people that ended up having hundreds of people. Why? Because, we were concerned. Many patriots who normally would have shown up at these events, at these protests, thought, I wonder if the FBI is there. I wonder if by being there, there's going to be something else that's going to happen. Something is going to stir up, and then I'm going to end up just like the J6 political prisoners. There was a concern. There was a fear. I'll just go ahead and say it. A lot of you were scared. I remember going to one event. This was supposed to be a huge event. I mean, it was supposed to have, like I said, over 10,000. They were estimating 11 to 14,000 people at this particular. It was a protest actually for January 6th. But anyway, protest in favor of the January 6th political prisoners, right? There was maybe 1,000 people, and I would say 10% of them were press. I mean, it was awful. It was abysmal. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing to be there. It was a waste of time. And I know that the January 6th, the events that followed after January 6th, the arrests, the narratives, the way that the people were demonized for protesting, that, more than anything else, is what cooled everybody down and got it to where more Americans complied. Now, thankfully, I would say that we're starting to finally come back, and we really have been since the beginning of the campaign. People have been more bold, more aggressive, more willing to go and support those who will fight for us, fight for our nation. So I'm going to give you 5 pieces of data, because trying to convince a normie that it wasn't an insurrection, it wasn't a riot, and that it was planned with those 2 goals in mind, well, other goals too, but those 2 primary goals in mind, getting people to believe that after 4 years of being bombarded with J6 is an insurrection, J6 was a riot, J6 is a riot. The only way that we can get them to understand is to be able to show them certain truths. Now, I've cherry-picked certain truths that, we can get into, go over videos, and we can go over a lot of these various things, but for the most part, I don't think that a lot of people are going to actually pay attention to that. You have to get them to there first by giving them information that kind of sparks their interest. So number 1, it has been demonstrated now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that, and admitted, not just beyond a shadow of doubt, the FBI, the Department of Justice, has admitted that there were undercover FBI agents there, and we have video evidence that they participated in instigating the attacks that happened, the entry into the Capitol building itself. FBI agents, and yes, there were, and they've admitted to dozens. I would say there's probably more than that. But then there were also FBI assets there. One would argue that if you include members of Antifa who were there, we've seen videos of Antifa, taking off their black Antifa gear, and then, they're in the bushes and then putting on MAGA hats and stuff like that. We've seen those videos. But we do know that there was a lot. Might have been a few, might have been dozens, might have been over 100 members of Antifa pretending to be MAGA and stirring people up, trying to get them to go enter the Capitol and to riot and to throw things and to steal podiums or whatever. Number 2, and this is a big one. This is the one that I think it keeps getting suppressed in the media, and we have to continue to reiterate this fact. And that's the fact that Mayor Bowser and Nancy Pelosi, the 2 people who were capable of accepting the help that Donald Trump had offered, capable of accepting 10,000 National Guardsmen. President Trump called for it, wanted them to accept 10,000 National Guardsmen to be present at the Capitol on January 6th, 2021. He authorized it. He had everything was good to go. All he needed was the request. And not only did Pelosi and Bowser not request it, Bowser specifically wrote saying, "We do not want National Guard there at all." Why would they do that? I mean, we now know, based upon information that has come out in the 4 years since, we now know that they were aware that there was probably going to be shenanigans. They knew. They were offered the solution. The solution is 10,000 National Guardsmen, and not a single person would have been able to enter the Capitol building on that day. There wouldn't, one could argue that because of Bowser's and Pelosi's unwillingness to accept the assistance that Donald Trump offered, that more than anything is why any of the deaths that took place on or after as a result of January 6th, any of those deaths should be not on Donald Trump, not on any of the organizers. Those deaths should be on Mayor Bowser and Nancy Pelosi for being either idiots or complicit. It's either they were in on it and they wanted this scam, this con, this conspiracy to move forward so they could stop President Trump and cool down patriots across the nation, or they were just the dumbest human beings possible. And it could go either way. I mean, technically it could be both. I mean, Mayor Bowser and Nancy Pelosi could both be the dumbest people possible and pure evil in allowing people to die as a result of their desire to keep President Trump from coming back into office. Number 3. This too has been confirmed by corporate media, very quietly, but still confirmed by corporate media, that the vast majority, nearly all of the law enforcement personnel who participated in the January 6th event, everybody who's there, everybody who helped coordinate, everybody who had eyes on the ground, ears in their headphones, watching things, helping things, trying to keep the peace, they have all been gagged. They are not allowed, under threat, by the way, not just threat of losing their jobs, some of them under threat of conviction, of charges being filed against them. They're not allowed to discuss the events. There were a certain few, a handful, some that were cherry-picked, some that were trusted. Many of them trusted specifically by Nancy Pelosi because she knew them. Members of Capitol Police who have come out, and they're kind of the spokespeople for what happened that day. Some of them, and I would say, I don't know for sure, but as far as I know, most, if not all of them, have been greatly rewarded for their cooperation, for their stories. Meanwhile, there are many police who have gone without being allowed to say a word. Some have killed themselves. Others have left the force in protest. I mean, you look at Michael Byrd. Don't even get me started. That's the officer who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt. You know, there's some sort of special about him, how his life has been turned upside down. Dude, his life is not turned. His life is exactly, he's being pampered right now. Okay, he's fine. You know who's not fine? Ashley Babbitt or her family. They're not fine. Number 4. This is one that gets me. You know, the J6 committee said that they had accumulated evidence that demonstrates that President Trump participated in an insurrection. They always have to use that word because, again, they want to be able to try to utilize the 14th Amendment. They thought, well, if we can get the insurrection label on him, then even if he's able to win in 2024, well, still, he'll be gone anyway. We'll be able to stop him. That was the plan. That's why they kept saying insurrection, insurrection, insurrection. Because somebody stole a podium. Anyway, so the J6 committee, with Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger proudly demonstrating their uniparty swamp credentials, they had all this evidence that Trump participated in the insurrection. The members of Trump's team participated in the quote-unquote insurrection. And then, when it came time to present this evidence, to bring this evidence to light to the American people, did they present it? No. They presented some of it, the parts that they cherry-picked, some of the stuff that they manufactured. Okay. some of the stuff they got that stuff out there, but everything else, they destroyed it. They destroyed the evidence against the wishes of then incoming Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. And if you've got evidence that Donald Trump committed insurrection, are you going to say, nope, we got rid of the evidence, but trust us, we saw it, and it definitely, totally proved that Trump is an insurrectionist. Totally proved it. We're not showing you, we destroyed it. But it totally. Oh, what about the testimonies that demonstrated that it definitely wasn't an insurrection? Well, we're suppressing those. You can't see Kash Patel's testimony. No. Can't see that. We'll show you Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. She's totally trustworthy. Yeah, they did everything they could to destroy evidence, to prevent the release of videos taken that day, and to prevent certain testimonies from ever coming to light. Kash Patel specifically had asked for a public hearing. They denied him. And then they sued to prevent his testimony from ever getting out. It wasn't released until, I think, the day before the January 6th committee was disbanded, and only because they can't. That's something, you can't shred video. You can try to suppress it, but it's there. People have copies of it. It's not like, oh my gosh, it's gone and disappeared. It never existed. No, he was there. He testified, and they tried to suppress it. And others, this happened to many people, but not Cassidy Hutchinson. No. Last but not least, and again, we're talking about pieces of evidence that I believe you can use to try to get your normie friends, leftists, rhinos, whatever, people that have been indoctrinated, people that have been brainwashed by corporate media, ways that you can get them to start opening their eyes. This isn't going to convince anybody. All we're trying to do is get the door open. Get the door open to where perhaps they can start looking into it themselves and find more evidence, read more damning information, and come to the conclusion that, holy crap, this really was planned and manufactured to stop Donald Trump from being president ever again and to prevent patriots from protesting. That's it. So this last piece of evidence, there were 5 police who died after January 6th. And we keep hearing about how there were these five law enforcement officers, 5 police officers who died in the line of duty on January 6th. That's not true. And if it were true, we can debate, who got hit over the head with what. We can debate, well, he killed himself because of the events of January 6th. Okay. But if there were police officers murdered, as they say, murdered or killed in some way, you would expect that when a police officer dies, the investigations will bring forward charges. I mean, it's not like, this was one of the most, they've been able to get convictions across the board, right? Convictions. They've been able to get all these convictions for all these various quote-unquote crimes, but they couldn't find one murderer, one person to charge with manslaughter. With all these videos, all this evidence, all the tracking data, and the complete and total weight of the Federal Bureau of Investigation helping them, they had 5 alleged cop killers, at least 5, and not a single one has been charged or arrested or prosecuted or jailed or convicted. 0. Not for murder, not for manslaughter, not for anything. Cops, mind you. Police deaths are tragic, just as all deaths are, but police deaths are tragic in a way because when they die, it's a different way than other deaths, because these are the friends, the peers of those who do the investigating. And by golly, when there's a quote-unquote cop killer out there, the police do what they need to do, and give their extra effort. And you're telling me that the Capitol Police, one of the most well-funded, well-trained police force in the United States of America, in the world, that they couldn't find any one of 5 cop killers? Not one? Zero? 0 charges. 0 arrests. 0 convictions. That, to me, says beyond a shadow of a doubt, the narrative being created. I'm not trying to downplay the deaths of these officers, to be clear. But the narrative that they're trying to create, that they're continuing to try to perpetuate, that J6 was an insurrection, that cops were killed, murdered as a result in the line of duty on J6, that it was just the MAGA people, and that it was all Trump's fault. Those 4 narratives are false. They know it. You know it. Now, hopefully, Lord willing, we can get other people, the normies, to learn the truth as well.